But usually for Thanksgiving and Christmas, over the years I've had more than one family that adopted me. And Overanalyze, who has a channel on YouTube, she invited me over, but I was feeling kind of, hermit mode, depressed. And I didn't really, but it was nice being asked. So thank you, Anna. I never made it over for pie the next day, and I'm sorry, but it's just been weird. The holidays suck for me. What can I say? I hate to be dreary, but they do. And I probably might have seasonal affective disorder or something. Even though you might say that in California you don't have real winters, but still it's kind of, there's not as much daylight. It has to do with daylight when you have SAD. Drinking doesn't really help. But making Fez Night videos does. And I want to make a special thank you to Melissa, if you're watching. Remember I said I'd do this. I wanted to thank Melissa for the inspirational messages she's been sending me. And I'm looking forward to more. And I just wrote some stuff down. It may not, hey, I don't care if you say that this was not a good Fez night. Fine, I don't care. I'm really not quite feeling it as I usually do. And it's probably sort of kind of lost my rhythm this week from having 4 days off. And I'm doing laundry right now as I'm taping this. And but when I was reading to the paper today, I was pretty happy to learn that The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is going to be available on DVD now. And so I'm going to start getting a Netflix. I'm not going to buy the whole box set. But it's coming out in a box set. Who knows? Maybe if I get if Santa leaves me a nice surprise, maybe I'll have some extra money. Yeah, things have been tight. That's why I'm drinking no name gin. Hey, it's not only the weather or whatever, sunlight that affects depression, but feeling poor does too. I'm looking forward to this country turning around. I think I'm not the only one. With gas prices going up and the middle class is really being squeezed, and those at the very top aren't feeling it at all. They never really feel it. They might look at their bank account or how many millions are coming in, but it doesn't affect whether they're going to go out on their yacht or fly their plane. So I'm happy about the Man from U.N.C.L.E. thing, and I read a review about it, and it's true. I watched. They had a couple episodes out on videotape, and when I was a child, I just loved that show. I thought it was so cool, and you could buy. When I started first grade, I didn't go to kindergarten. I grew up I was born in New Mexico, and only rich kids in those days went to kindergarten. The state didn't provide it, and so I remember first grade. My very first lunchbox was a Man from U.N.C.L.E. lunchbox, and it's one of those things that I almost would want to spend the money if I could find a vintage Man from U.N.C.L.E. lunchbox. I can't waste my money on something like that, but boy, it would with the thermos still intact, would be so cool. It's funny the things you remember and you become attached to. And I watched one of these old episodes on VHS, and it was cheesy. They didn't have money for really good special effects. It's like the episode, they have a scene like in the North Pole, and it's so obviously not the North Pole. And they're in a giant igloo, and it's so obviously, fake snow and everything. But it's great. I think I'm going to look forward to watching those. And I want to, I got a heads up from World's Pole's End, and I haven't followed the news, so I would have saw this, but I'm glad he was the first to let me know that Australia has a new prime minister. John Howard was defeated, and the Labour Party is in place. Yay, Labour! And this is interesting that the new environmental minister is Peter Garrett of Midnight Oil. So that's pretty neat, And they're going to apparently I read something. I said they're not going to distance themselves from the Bush administration, but the new prime minister, his name is oh damn, I wrote this down. Kevin Rudd. The new prime minister is going to be Kevin Rudd, and he one of the first things he's going to see about getting in on the Kyoto Agreement, and so that's going to be one of his priorities is the environment. And what little I read about him, seems like a good guy. And I watched Yahweh Out There, if I say his name right, Yahweh Out There. He's from Australia, and he was talking about, he had a video that he posted on voting, is, I don't want to paraphrase you wrong, but it's basically kind of useless or something. But he mentioned that he would even pay the fine that would be imposed for not voting, which is interesting because we don't have that in the U.S. But in Australia, if you don't vote, you pay a fine. And I think they were talking about doing that in the UK. It would be interesting to see what would happen. Hell, in the U.S., the Republicans don't want you to vote. Because if you're poor and disenfranchised, it's good for them. They don't want the blacks or the Mexicans or the poor disenfranchised people to vote. Paleocrat, I hope you're watching this because man, I watched your video and you really struck a nerve with me about linking Christianity and conservatism. And then I just, flippantly said that Jesus was a liberal. And then you were talking about that the fact that Jesus was a liberal is a myth. And it almost sounded the way it was worded is that the whole Jesus thing is a myth. But I know you didn't mean that. But the phrase bleeding heart, okay? Bleeding heart liberal, where do you think that comes from? The sacred bleeding heart of Jesus. You're Catholic, The whole idea of feeding the poor. Liberalism had its roots in Christianity. The fact of freeing the slaves. A conservative would say, oh, everything's just great the way it is. And a liberal says, no, there needs to be a change. And I'm curious to see what you come up with. But you do these verbal backflips. And it's almost smoke and mirrors with some sort of erudite babble to make your point, referencing these obscure theologians and probably Republicans and members of the Catholic Church to make your point. And I like you, man, but to ignore the fact that so much of what Jesus talked about comes off as being liberal. Forgiving people, turning the other cheek. That's all the mushy stuff that the conservatives upset them. Like, don't torture people. At what point in the Bible did Jesus point his finger at somebody and say, torture that guy, waterboard him, hang him on a cross? That's what the Romans did to him. That's what his own people did to him. It struck a nerve. Anyway, okay, I'm done with that rant. Here's to being a liberal, and the fact that more of the Christian right is breaking apart. The foundation is falling apart from under it because Christians are finally waking up and seeing the hypocrites that have been leading them and putting their trust in these Republican hypocrites. Okay. People pretending to be the goody-goody, but they're all closet homosexuals who are not brave enough to just come out and say, look, accept me for what I am. Because they like the power. Republicans like power. They like money. And they don't care about the common man. They don't. I'm upset. That upset me.